All right, good morning, guys. Happy Asynchronous Wednesday. So I'm going to get you going on today's lesson. We have to do like a actual lesson today. I know I just usually throw you guys like an ed puzzle or something, but because of scheduling and we lost a period yesterday because of the half day, we actually have to squeeze in an actual lesson here. So this is AIM 9.5, and it's really about why the U.S. went to war in Iraq, and this is the middle of the modern conflicts unit. So we've talked about the Arab-Israeli conflict. We've talked about Israel and Palestine specifically. Yesterday we did the Iranian Revolution. So today we're going to talk about the wars between the U.S. and Iraq. And moving forward, we'll talk about Afghanistan, and then we'll move on to some other things after that. So today is all about the wars in Iraq. So away we go. All right. So, and you could pause this as you need to and kind of go about your business. However, the bottom line is the U.S. fought two wars in Iraq for various reasons. The first war is referred to as the Persian Gulf War. It was very, very quick. I think major combat operations were complete in a matter of like a couple of weeks, and that was it. But so the story goes, the reason we went to war the first time is because Iraq decided to invade Kuwait for the purposes of obtaining their oil, essentially. And the U.S. was a major purchaser of Kuwaiti oil. So needless to say, if Iraq is going to come under, is going to come to be in control of Kuwait's oil supply, that prevents us from doing business with Kuwait in any real way, and that doesn't work out for us. So the U.S. essentially invades Iraq in order to kind of solidify our oil interests in the Middle East. Essentially, Iraq claims that even though Kuwait is pumping oil on their property, that oil belongs to a large underground oil reservoir that lies mostly over the border and under Iraqi soil. So Iraq basically claimed that Kuwait was stealing Iraqi oil, even though they're pumping it out of their own territory. So that was the excuse they came up with. They tried to invade Iraq. We intervened, turned them back, and it was pretty quick after that major combat operations were over. The U.S. was victorious. The important thing to note here is that the U.S. left the Iraqi government largely intact after this. There was no accountability or any kind of legitimate punishment applied to them for this, and that will come back to haunt them in the end, I suppose. Second war in Iraq went a little different. This is much later, obviously, so you can check out the dates there. This one's going to last a while, 8 years. And the idea here is that supposedly Iraq is in possession of weapons of mass destruction. And the U.S., this is, contextualized here. This is 2003. The September 11th attacks are 2 years old at this point. So weapons of mass destruction and kind of sponsors for terrorism are on the forefront of the mind of many Americans, and especially our Department of Defense. So that's the story here. The story goes is that Iraq was in possession of weapons of mass destruction, and they had used them previously on a group of people in northern Iraq called the Kurds, which is an ethnic group in the northern part of Iraq, and it overlaps into Syria and other places also. But Saddam Hussein essentially was accused of perpetrating genocide on these people and using chemical weapons to carry out that genocide. So the U.S. invaded. Truth be told, we never found any kind of significant caches of weapons of mass destruction, be them biological, chemical, or otherwise. So that's a different kind of question. The U.S. also claims that Iraq is promoting terrorism. As we move forward in the unit, we will see the rise of, we'll talk about the rise of ISIS and things like that. And ISIS is born in parts of Iraq and has a pretty decent stronghold there too. So the same reasons that we invaded Afghanistan as being kind of a safe haven for terrorists and terrorist activity, we apply that same logic to Iraq also. So between the weapons of mass destruction and their kind of sheltering of terrorist elements, those are the excuses that the United States uses to go to war with Iraq the second time. The second war goes very different than the first. The first, like I said, we weren't kind of intent on dismantling Iraq entirely. So just kind of repelling their advance and turning them back with a slap on the wrist is something that you can do in a couple of weeks. But the second war in Iraq becomes a full blown occupation. Um, and it goes very differently. You have a lot of insurgency and rebel groups and different groups competing for power, especially after you dismantle the Iraqi government. Major combat operations against the formal government of Iraq are over very, very quickly. But most of this time in this war is spent trying to figure out how to rebuild Iraq and trying to build a political infrastructure in Iraq that will allow it to govern itself moving into the future, which proves to be pretty tricky also. So for the classwork today, you're going to look at a couple documents, one on each war, and you're also going to check out a video clip that discusses Iraq before and after the war. And Saddam Hussein, spoiler alert, is going to be tried for crimes against humanity, found guilty, and hung for perpetrating that genocide on the Kurds in northern Iraq. But it's still worth an examination of is Iraq really better off before or after this whole thing? So there are some people who would claim that Iraq was in better shape even when Saddam Hussein was in control. Even though he's perpetrating genocide in the north, the rest of the country is generally a more stable place before rather than after the dismantling of the Iraqi government. Now, who's to say whose fault that is or why that's the case, but it's worth a look anyway. So you'll check out a video clip of Iraq before and after the war also. So just make sure you answer in complete sentences and complete it by 11:59 tonight so you get credit for being present today. And I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Later.